Welcome back to Sunday School, everyone. I'm Jared Anderson, and this is Engaging Gospel Doctrine, episode 374, which is a bonus episode on sustainable Sunday School. So we are going to talk about money. You'll notice there was no new episode last week or this week, and that is because the support of the podcast has not been high enough to justify putting out the weekly new episodes. Now, I am going to push ahead and try to do 3 episodes in the next one and then catch up based on how you show up for the podcast. So we'll see how that goes. Isn't it weird that we're not allowed to talk about money in our culture? Money is a taboo. We're supposed to want it, we're supposed to have it, but we're not supposed to talk about it. And in large part, I think that the taboo around money and the cultural messages around money function to perpetuate inequality. You know, we're not supposed to talk about how money works, and so that we can each have our private, unspoken shame, debt, whatever. Well, we're going to break it down in this very brief episode. So the vision of this podcast, as I have said again and again, this is a free podcast. Engaging Gospel Doctrine is a free podcast that is funded by the supporters who are able and willing to support the podcast so that it can be free for everyone. Occasionally, I've received suggestions about limiting the podcast, but I'm not going to. It will always be free. And this fits the Olam Institute's vision of being open source, being widely available. I want to dedicate my life to increasing well-being and help people thrive, both individually and collectively, and I want to give away everything that I can do for good. I just need things to be sustainable. Let's talk about the financial history of Engaging Gospel Doctrine for a bit. From 2012 to 2014, I started the podcast under the Open Stories Foundation umbrella. According to my knowledge, the Sunday School podcast and Mormon Matters are the only 2 podcasts that have been able to sustain themselves or been sustained by listeners. Dan Witherspoon now does the Latter-day Faith podcast. From 2015 to 2016, we had several $50 a month donations and $100 a month donations that formed the core support. In 2016, we received the most support ever. One listener donated all resources and labor required to get us classified as a 501c3 so that all all contributions are tax deductible. And then 3 different listeners donated close to $5,000 each in December. I think we brought in about $31,000 in 2016. And then, of course, multiple thousands of that were required for legal fees and so forth. But we've never made that much in the podcast before. In 2018 is when I changed the name from Mormon Sunday School, or the URL rather, from Mormon Sunday School to Engaging Gospel Doctrine. I'm proud of the fact that the podcast has always been named Engaging Gospel Doctrine, so it was very easy to update the branding per President Nelson's recommendations around the name of the church, but Apple was not happy, and it took me months to get the feed back up, and I'm pretty sure we lost thousands of listeners and at least hundreds of monthly listeners. And then last year in 2019, a single listener saved the podcast, or we would not have it this year. In 2020, here is how we're doing so far, having taken out the $30 to $40 a month in PayPal fees. So PayPal fees are $30 to $40 a month, and then we have maintenance with WordPress and the URLs and so forth. January, we brought in $738, February $669, March $901, April $916, May $759. I have set the minimum of $1,000 a month to be able to justify the time that I am spending on top of my hospice job and prison job and all of the other trainings. I'm starting divinity school. So I have a lot going on. I love doing the podcast. It is always a joy to do the podcast, but I can't justify the podcast time-wise unless we have that $1,000 benchmark for funding. So what are we going to do about it? I mean, we're about 3/4 of the support that we need. So my proposed solution is that we have core supporters, we could call it a quorum for fun, who support about half the podcast. So if we could get around 10 people to donate $50 or so a month, maybe $100 a month if you can, but at least maybe, like 10 people who are donating $50 a month each. And then the rest of you listeners, as you can donate. Most of our donations are $5 a month, $10 a month, a few $25 a month. And currently we only have 3 $50 a month donations, which means that they are already carrying that disproportionate amount of sustainability. There's another donor who has been giving $50 a month. I need to check in. I'm not sure where he is right now. So quorum privileges. I always consider myself available. Please do email, reach out. I just barely got an email from a listener who has been going through some really hard things. And he said, here's my phone number. Can we talk? Absolutely. I am very glad to support not just podcast listeners, but pretty much anyone. Like, it's my favorite thing to minister and to show up for people. This is my vocation. This is what's most important to me. So quorum privileges. You can make requests for bonus episodes. I'll be your research assistant. I was Bart Ehrman's research assistant for 4 years. I will be glad to give you pastoral counseling, weekly talks, as I am, or I guess with one of my supporters, we're doing monthly talks, but we could talk more often than that. But you will have preferential access to me, which is really a technicality since I try to make myself available. If you reach out, you'll find out that I'm much more available talking one-on-one than I am reliable about getting the podcast out. Because again, ministry is my main passion, although I do love content creation. So let's talk about the 3 levels of podcast production. Where we are right now is I am consistently reissuing the old episodes. I hope you're enjoying those. I'm very happy with the quality of those. And as I said, in the next few days, I will make it a priority this weekend to get this triple episode out so that we can catch up. I want $1,000 a month of support, and I commit to weekly episodes, weekly updates, reissuing the old episodes, and then posting new episodes weekly. Now, if we get over $1,000 a month of support, then we can play, then we can talk. And if I get over, when I was putting about 20 hours a week into the podcast, my goal was about $2,000 a month. And if we can get above $1,000 a month of support, we can talk about new content. We can talk about bringing back discussions. I'd like to get some younger voices, some diverse voices. We'll see about that. But currently the goal is to get back up to that $1,000 a month. I don't need catch up. Like, if we can if we can get the core supporters and then consistently hit $1,000 a month, I will be happy. Remember that the top donor gets my signed copy of Tom Wayman's The New Testament with all my annotations in it. I may wait longer than the end of the month. Maybe I'll do a drawing from the core supporters, I think, unless we have another really big donor. So this week, I'm going to reach out and see if we can get those 10 or 12 core supporters. 12 would be fun, just to call it a quorum. I hope that you listened all the way through this episode. It's only 10 minutes. Again, I know it's not comfortable to talk about money and support, but it's the nitty-gritty that keeps everything going. For those who are donating and supporting the podcast, thank you so much. It is a blessing and a delight to be able to do this podcast. I love applying my expertise. I continue to work forward in my own training and in my growth, and it's really rewarding to take my academic training of the scriptures and then add on my devotional ministerial training. And now I am adding on other approaches such as application, even metaphysical interpretation. That's what I'm currently taking classes on, going into my divinity program. So I am committed to making the podcast better and better and better and consistent. And in return, I need your support. So thank you very much for making it possible.